Welcome in, everybody, to the basketball by association. It's the new jingle thought of for the top of the show. It's off the top of my head, but it probably sucks, because it's brand new. All thought of by me, Angel. What's up, Joel? How are you?
Well, we've gone down from 3 listeners to 0 listeners.
Okay,
But
that's
come
rude.
back, everybody. He's done singing. Come on back. It's all right.
I
Episode
will
99,
sing
Arky Shea.
Freebird. I swear to God, I will sing Freebird.
The song everyone asks to be played except for when Arky is singing it.
Let me ask you this. Okay,
Yeah.
let's say you're doing karaoke. What's your go-to?
I'm a big fan of Queen for karaoke. And I feel like the one I can nail the best is Coldplay songs. Not because I'm a specifically like a Coldplay guy, but I can sing in that register pretty easily. So I have sung in Vietnam Coldplay songs multiple times. It was fun.
I have never done that. Either one of those actually, Coldplay nor in Vietnam. But I really felt when I was like 13, I was with my mom in her car, Jeep Cherokee, beautiful car. It was terrible, but we were driving, and I was singing "I Believe I Could Fly."
Mm-hmm.
Right, I was nailing it.
Absolutely.
Probably, possibly, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom said, "You know what? You could sing karaoke." And I thought at the time that meant I could sing really well. But no, that was a nice little, come to Jesus moment I had when I looked up and figured out what karaoke was.
She didn't hit you with this one. She didn't say, "Arky, who sings that song?" We're like, "Mom, it's R. Kelly." She said, "Good, let's keep it that way."
That one would have hurt. That one would have hurt too. That's like when my little league coach would be like, "Hey, I wish I had more people who would go out here and run and hustle like Arky." And I was like, and I thought hustle meant run really fast. It just meant run hard. That's all. So like, I wasn't fast. I was just chugging. That's all. I was chugging along. And
you're an effort guy. You're an effort guy.
Technically, it was a compliment. Really felt like an insult once you learn the true definition of hustle. It wasn't just, especially when you juxtapose that to what I thought it meant. It was, listen, that summer was a hard year for me. I'll be honest with you. Learned a lot of words and the real definitions that burnt my soul. So yeah, my go-to, by the way, would be like Garth Brooks' "Friends in Low Places."
Yeah.
So, like, I think karaoke songs should be songs that people in the crowd could get along and sing with you. I think they have to be songs that encourage interaction. Like, if you're just up there singing, like, ballads or something, like, I don't know what you're doing out there. I think you need to make it about the experience. But that's just me. I'm a Kyrie kind of giver,
With that said, Arky Shea, we're going to talk the Lakers falling apart. We're going to talk the Nets coming back together. Talk playoff matchups, all sorts of good things. And this is episode 99. And there are 7 different players in NBA history who have worn 99, 2 of whom are wearing it right now, which makes it not only a fun number because it's penultimate to our 100th episode, which will be cool. That should be coming up next week. But let's just run down the list of people who have worn 99, including Arky Shea, a Hall of Famer. A slam dunk Hall of Famer. But first, I just want to get this out of the way. There's a certain team that when we've hit the weird numbers, they've shown up like every freaking time like clockwork.
Oh, no.
Yes, there is a Detroit Falcons player. Ariel McGann? I don't know. 1947, the Detroit Falcons, this dude wore number 1999. Also, George Giammick, 2 years later, the Indianapolis Jets in 1949. So things were getting weird back then, this we know. But Arky Shea, during that same era, we have the Hall of Famer, George Mikan, rocking number 99 from the years 49 through 56. Oddly,
I guess he
not
did,
in the year 1955. That may have been an injury year for George.
I guess he did wear like 99, right? Like that's not a number I associate really sort of with anybody. Like I think of and we're talking about the team that Jay Crowder or something like. Did he wear 99? I think.
Yeah, he's wearing 99 right now,
Yeah.
so it's great that you brought him up. Jay Crowder would be a wonderful guy to name in episode 4 because Jay Crowder, you talk about hustle guys.
Yeah.
Jay Crowder has hustled his way into a very nice NBA career after being much unheralded, a complete afterthought, coming in with the Utah Jazz and the Dallas Mavericks, and suddenly he's become one of those like intangible glue guys on some very, very good teams over the last 5 years. Remember, he was with the Celtics kind of during their rising heyday, 2015-16. You got Isaiah Thomas there and whatnot. He goes to the Cavs with LeBron as they try to retool. They did make the NBA Finals. Doesn't win it there. Was on a couple of good Utah Jazz teams, 18-19. On the Grizzlies in 2020, and then traded to the Miami Heat, where he goes to the NBA Finals. Then Phoenix Suns last year and this year, so went to the finals last season. They're chasing that ring right now with the best record in the league, but we're not going to name it after Jay Crowder, nor are we going to name it after a pair of Boston Celtics alumni. It's not going to be named after Darko Milicic, who wore 99 his one season in Boston as he was trying to keep his career on life support, nor for Roy Rogers, one of the best NBA names ever. He played with the Celtics in 98.
That's a name I haven't heard. I feel like in forever.
Roy Rogers, also probably most notably known with the Grizzlies, and I believe on the Clippers, although Rodney Rogers was out there too, so it's hard to keep them apart. No, here's the guy that we're going to name it for, because not only is his name just boatloads of fun, but he just seems like a fun guy, and he's been part of some really interesting highlights over the last couple years. Arky Shea, it's a delicious episode because episode 99 is the Taco Fall episode.
Where did he get this? He just got traded. Where did he get
more excited about this? It's Taco Fall.
Well, I like Taco Fall. Like, I'm not going to be mad about Taco Fall.
Taco was on the Celtics the last 2 seasons. He appeared in a total of 26 games there. He was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. He currently is in their G League system, although he has appeared 11 times for the Cavs this season. In case you didn't know, Taco Fall is 7'6", maybe 7'7", depending on the shoes. It's not like we've heard that one before.
Yeah, he's a proud UCF Golden Knights, what he is. Definitely remember him. Just black as night. It's the UCF black as night jersey, black on black on black on black on black. And he kind of was like a Celtics novelty.
He was.
Right? Like,
he was a human victory cigar, honestly.
Like Brad Stevens was never really going to play Taco Fall, right? Really? But like the fans, especially in the early of the season last year and preseason, like when the game was out of hand or even close, like they wanted a big time, right?
Yeah,
like why would you?
There.
Like it's like being at the circus, like atmosphere. Like it's still in us, right? To be like, let's see the tallest guy on the earth right now, or what we think is, So yeah, why not?
I mean, here's to hoping that Taco Fall, and same with Ball, both guys that were brought in, and you didn't know if they're, novelties, much like Manute and George Mirasan and Sean Bradley back in the day. Let's hope that these guys can have, long and productive careers, and it may take a little bit to latch on. The same thing happened for Manute. But all of those guys wound up playing like 10 years, although granted it was a different league, and that kind of shows you that back then with the huge centers and you didn't have to get out of the paint, you could draft a guy simply for being really, really tall and hope that you could teach him enough basketball skills. And now it's being really tall can be that detriment instead of that asset, because you got to be able to move out of the pick and roll and you got to be able to close out on guys. And that's tough.
I know you haven't done a lot of college basketball watching, but that's why I think so many people are intrigued with Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga. Huge dude, but shoots the threes, can get off the pick and roll kind of well. Like, I mean, he looks like he definitely he was in high school last year, so yeah, he needs some some building of that body to degree to fill out. But like, I don't know, it's a very interesting prospect to sort of pay attention to for whomever gets him 1, 2, or 3. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go 1, but there are a couple of guys that can go 1 ahead of him. But that's for like June talk, right? Like May, June talk, something like we're maybe a little July talk, just see what happened. But now it's go ahead.
I was just going to say before we move on, the fact that he may go that early as a center, and the fact that the NBA this year is going to allow you to put multiple centers on the NBA first team, second team, third team. Like, you don't just have to vote for one. is just a sign again, this idea that, oh, all the big men are gone. No, we've got so many, we don't have enough spots for them. Karl Anthony Towns and Joel Embiid and Jokic, but then you got that second tier of Bam Adebayo and Rudy Gobert, who seems to win MVP, the Defensive Player of the Year every single season. And you can go another 5 centers typically beyond that who legit, DeAndre Ayton is probably going to play for a championship within this year or the next couple on those Phoenix Suns. There's a handful of centers like that who legitimately could have Hall of Fame careers. And here we are in this era that supposedly doesn't have them, with 10 guys that could be on an all NBA team at some point here in the near future, if not immediately.
But those centers also are becoming less like the centers that we're used to. They're
right. They play different.
We're getting further and further away from the basket. I'm back to the basket guys right now. But who knows? There could be a resurgence. I don't think Chet Holmgren's going to be that guy to start the resurgence. But we'll see. Joel, let's just start it. Did not think I'd be starting this podcast with you already talking about the first place Boston Celtics. That's because Miami has self-destructed in the last week, in very big emphasis on self-destruct.
Yeah, almost literal.
Like it just wild. And Boston has not cooled down by any stretch of the imagination. And I bring this up also because, Joel, you got a chance literally just to see them and to watch them go against your team. Like 1A and 1B as far as hottest teams since the All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of this Celtics team? Now they're tied for first, and like only a half game up. Was it on? Who are the half game up on? Milwaukee, right? Milwaukee, not Philly. Milwaukee. So it's not as if they're running away with it. But last week I literally just said, I guess Miami's going to win the 1 seed. What do we think about them? Well, maybe not. So you saw them up close and personal against your Minnesota Timberwolves.
A rather definitive trouncing.
Yes, another they're beating teams by 16 points a game.
Right, they beat the Jazz by 28 just a couple nights before that. They beat the Nuggets by 20, and that game was actually much further out of hand than 20 points. They beat the Warriors, who are struggling right now, by 22. And then their most recent loss was like a couple weeks ago to the Mavericks by 3 points. It's been more than a month. Outside of that,
they did, by the way, just get bad news. I think Robert Williams torn a meniscus, and he's going to be out for a little bit of time for them. But outside of that, again, I want you to be able to finish your thought.
The Robert Williams injury hurts in that he's an energy anchor guy, and they could start the game off with his energy. But they've also kind of vacillated between playing him big minutes depending on the matchup and then only playing him like 20 minutes a game, which doesn't make a lot of sense on paper, but they've done so well small. They've done well with Al Horford at the 5 a little bit, with Daniel Tice filling in those minutes. So I think it can take the wind out of the sails just a little bit in that it's one less option, but they've still been winning even when Robert Williams doesn't play all that much. So I don't know that really changes things unless you get into like a Boston versus Philly type of matchup in the playoffs and he still is not there. That's a problem. Boston, for so long, we've talked about balance, so I won't go down that road again. But for so long, just didn't seem to have spark. They didn't seem to have chemistry, an identity. You didn't know which team you were going to get on a nightly basis. They didn't seem to know what they had. They would go back and forth between, these try-hard games where they would look pretty good and then just walking out there and there was no fire whatsoever. And it seems like since the trade deadline, since bringing in Derek White, moving Dennis Schroeder, moving Enes Kanter, bringing back Daniel Tice, and I don't know if just the changing in personality was a secret sauce. The Celtics all say a lot of it has to do with Marcus Smart playing point guard and just whatever the mix is there. Smart is a guy who can handle the ball, but he's not a full-time point guard, a guy who really thrives with it in his hands like Dennis Schroeder does. the ball moves a lot more. Remember, Al Horford was kind of one of the guys over the last 10, 15 years to play a little bit of a point center role. So I think the fact offensively that the ball just continues to move, they seem to believe in what they're doing. That's a testament to the coaching staff and Ime Udoka. The roster is just that much more balanced. There's young guys who they've been waiting on for a couple of years, like Grant Williams and Peyton Pritchard, especially.
Peyton Pritchard can't miss when he's in. He is on a roll. He is on an absolute roll for them. And you're right. Like, it's just it's the combination of the dogs you knew you had, and like some of these other role players and players that you were hoping to develop have suddenly like started to gel and start to find their game, and it's working. It's working right now, and it's not just for a couple of weeks. It's been working for a while.
Yeah,
that's what makes me think this team's got what it takes.
It seemed like for so long they'd only have one or two things working at a time, and it was like whack-a-mole. When you'd solve one issue, whether it be health, then there was chemistry issues, or then it was a Brad Stevens issue, or it was a roster issue, whatever. And now all of a sudden everything is coming together finally with that maturity and out of the stars too. But there just seems to be a different sort of fire and chemistry of belief, and winning begets that. But that belief maybe in the coaching staff and the new voice that's there, and to finally see this work and all of this potential that they've had for a long time. And I think it was really wise of Boston to look back and go, okay, there was a point a few years ago where we had decent chemistry and we were outplaying our talent level. And for the last couple of years, it's been the exact opposite. Who were some of the guys who really sparked us? Well, it was Marcus Smart. He's still here. Let's not trade him at the deadline. But you know what? Everybody seemed to like and respect Al Horford when he was here. Everybody really liked Daniel Tice when he was here. And Daniel Tice really just is a hustle guy. He's a dog guy. Al Horford is that kind of guy too. And Horford just fills in the gaps for everybody else. He's disappointing, or has been throughout his career, when you've tried to cast him as like a top 3 option. But when he's a glue guy, he is phenomenal. Yeah. And to recognize that and bring those guys back, almost in a mea culpa type of thing.
Dude, yeah, I was about to say, he like undoing Brad Stevens, undoing what Danny Ainge did. Like almost immediately. It's almost like Brad Stevens saw what was lost on that team.
And who better to see that, because he was the coach, right?
Right. And to say, hey, if we got a chance to get guys like this back into the fold, listen, it's not going to make a ton of headlines everywhere else, but it's going to be something that I think is going to help the team. And it's paid off dividends, man. Like it really has. And it's not one of these like, hey, they went out and got like a future Hall of Famer or anything like that to add to their roster. They perfect way you said it, just glue guys that just sort of people liked on that roster, sort of fill in the gap, so to speak. And like they're good. They're good. Let me read. By the way, I mentioned Peyton Pritchard. His last since March 18th from 3, he is 4 of 4, 5 of 5, 5 of 11, 3 of 4, 3 of 5. That's a guy that wasn't playing,
right?
Basically.
Well, and he's a guy who can handle the traditional point guard distributor type of role, but he's strong enough off the ball, even though he's undersized. But he's strong enough off the ball to be out of the play and just be that release valve for when you're going to ISO Jason Tatum, or you're going to run stuff for Jaylen Brown, what have you. He's versatile enough. And the same thing with Grant Williams. Grant Williams keeps getting better and better as a corner 3-point shooter. He's a little undersized defensively, but he's so beefy that you can throw him in there at the 4 or the 5. Offensively, he does just a little bit of everything, and defensively, he just gives you a different look that seems to mesh. So there is an intangible sense here with the Celtics finally that's really hard to get a handle on. But one of the things that I love is there is no question anymore what the rotation looks like, what the depth chart looks like. Before this, there was always like 6-7 guys on the bench who were potential guys. They had been taken with all those picks that the Celtics had, middle of the first round, late in the first round, and they would show you those flashes, and they'd look like they'd win a job one night and then not the other. And so you would roll the dice and go with somebody else, and it's whoever had the hot hand. There was just no continuity, and whether that was a coaching issue or a rotation issue, I don't know. But you look at the Celtics now, and if there's any perceived weakness, It's that in the third unit, I don't think there's anybody out of that third unit where you really want to hand them minutes. Sorry, Broderick Thomas, Nick Stauskas, Luke Cornett, Keelan Martin, guys like that. There's not anybody else waiting in the wing. The coffers have been used up, but what that's done is given you your 9-10 guys that you know exactly who they are, exactly what the minutes are going to be, and the starters benefit from that predictability as well.
Yeah, they're deep and they're known commodities and they're trusted commodities is what they are too. So you and it's big now. You know, I hate sort of betting on a team like that's been hot for this long, knowing at some point they're going to cool off. But like they got some potential good matchups now because they're also beating really good teams by a lot too. And I think that's something to sort of bolster your opinion of Boston if you want to, if you're at least a little on the fence because they've been so good for so long. But like they staying that good basically since the beginning of the year. Like this isn't like a, they're 9 of the last 10. Lots of teams end up doing that over the stretch of the season. But like it's just been super consistent. Let me ask you the other. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, kind of as a segue, and we can table this for a couple minutes if you got something else. But is it better for Boston to be in the number 1 seed, have home court advantage the whole way through, and potentially have to face the Brooklyn Nets in the 8th seed to start things off? Although Brooklyn, with the way they're playing, and we're going to get to them in a couple minutes, they may move beyond the 8th seed relatively quickly. Or is it better for Boston to be down in the 2nd, 3rd? It's kind of segueing, I guess, into those playoff matchups that you're excited to see, but we can get to that in a little bit if you want.
Yeah, we can get to that in just a second because I think at this point it's going to be hard for them to tell, right? Because we're only looking at like 6-7 games left in the season, and like you
4.5 games separating first place from 6th place. Like the Toronto Raptors, if in a bizarro universe, could jump from 6th to 1st place. It's not going to happen, but it could.
Well, I didn't think the Celtics would be here in a week. Right.
That's what's so ridiculous. Like the Celtics were down in the 9th seed, 8th seed, like early in the season and just hanging out down there. And we're like, all right, well, that's pretty much where Boston was all of last year. And, the year before that in the bubble, they weren't all that good either. So I guess the coaching change isn't going to do anything. Ime Udoka is doing the same thing that Brad Stevens did. I guess we got to split them up and, trade Jaylen Brown. I was giving you Jaylen Brown trade ideas like coming out of the ears prior to the deadline.
I didn't hate him either, by the way.
No.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like where we sit right now, I think the Celtics were, 3 games out when we last spoke of first place.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought, okay, well, 3 games in hand, basically with 9 to go. Miami's going to win a game again, right? They're probably going to win 5 at 500. They're odd. We're just penciling them in for the number 1 spot, and they've been a disaster.
Milwaukee, Charlotte, Brooklyn are all 7-3 of their last 10. That's hot enough in the Eastern Conference, and Toronto's 8-2 in their last 10. But nobody is hotter than the Celtics. Like those streaks mean nothing because Boston just keeps not only winning at a high rate, but winning at such a high rate lately that nobody can touch it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, they literally are. Boston is ridiculous right now. Let me ask you on the other end. Miami. What do you make of the implosion of the Heat over the last week? And not only that, but I mean, we were semi-skeptical of when the playoffs finally started that they would just sort of be the number 1 seed, but that's just because they weathered the storm like better than everybody else. I mean, are you worried about Miami now as we get closer and closer to the playoffs? And no matter who that first round matchup might be, that we may not be worried about Miami, we're worried about the other team?
I'm worried because you really only have 3 potential outcomes from a blow up of that magnitude between Jimmy Butler, Udonis Haslem, and Eric Spoelstra. All 3 are very well respected within that locker room and very integral to what the Heat do. There's only 3 outcomes, and 2 out of the 3 are bad. So let's get to the good one first. Miami is a team that we talked about last week is going to rely on out-executing people and kind of out-chemistrying people to come up with a word. So if this is like what they're trying to spin it as a bunch of competitors getting really hot and upset at each other, and that it can be a productive sort of rallying cry that's just proof about how much everybody cares. If that's true, then Miami is really right where they were last week. It's just they've lost a couple of games, and that happens to teams, especially as other, opponents start to heat up a little bit. Miami, like we said, was kind of biding their time and taking advantage of the situation. So Miami will still be a tough out under those circumstances if Jimmy and Udonis were able to get together and hash this out and there's no hard feelings.
It's just like
I don't know.
You play like 7 seconds a game or something. Like we're like
you're but he's an assistant coach. I mean, let's call it what it is. He's an assistant coach.
But like what the fact that kind of beef is happening, with like a 45-year-old assistant coach / player on the team, and the head coach and your stud player Jimmy Butler, like. It's wild, right? Like it's just it's wild that it's much because these guys aren't also new to each other. Like it's wild at this point of the season that a bad stretch of play could cause some kind of a havoc that could have really long-lasting effects.
So here's the other two outcomes that are not so good.
Yeah,
you have. I mean, worst case scenario is that this is a legit beef. And we remember that Jimmy Butler, in his quote unquote competitiveness, let's call it lack of interpersonal skills sometimes, because that's what it is.
Okay.
Ran his way out of Chicago, ran his way out of Minnesota, ran his way out of Philadelphia for not getting along with people. And either demanding too much and pretending that he's Kobe Bryant. Remember, Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, for as good a basketball players as they were not very good teammates sometimes. And Jimmy Butler is not Michael Jordan. So that act, that MO, whatever you want to call it, while it can be laudable when it works, when you're not winning and it's not working, Jimmy Butler is no different than one of the Van Gundy brothers or some of these other coaches who really light into people, and Tom Thibodeau too, really just become abrasive, and people tune that out quickly and they want nothing to do with those guys when it's not working. And so the Heat hitting a skid here, all of a sudden Butler, the message is off or whatever.
When this happened, they were in first place.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think they had a little bit of a disappointing effort in the fourth quarter against the Warriors or whatever. And okay, so you took one a little bit on the chin late, by the way. You didn't get blown out in that game. You just lost it at the end. They gave up nearly 40 points or something in the fourth quarter of that game. But, then you got to rally up because my Knicks just beat you, okay? That shouldn't be happening to you. I mean, God bless the Knicks, only 4.5 out of the play-in. But listen, and they'll probably get it. But that can't be happening now. This isn't a middling team. This was a team at the top of the standing. That's just – I don't know. It feels like there's a lot more there than
that's just it. Yeah,
this is the second longest place Jimmy Butler's been anywhere. Maybe you're right. Maybe he's been that abrasive that it doesn't take nearly as much for everyone to be like, "What? Fight you? I'm the coach. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, and like you said, this probably didn't come completely out of left field. That would be very odd unless it's, again, somebody just having a completely bad night. And we're pointing the finger here. We're assuming that it might be Jimmy Butler's issue. It could have been something that Haslem said where he stuck his foot in his mouth and it, spiraled out, or Haslem's having a bad day and wasn't going to back down, or it's just that poor interpersonal chemistry between the two of them. We don't know because, of course, it's the Heat, so you're never going to get a straight answer. They're going to spin things completely. It starts with Pat Riley, but I know this from even back at my days at Bleacher Report. They have one of the most locked down public relations departments that you can imagine. It's like dealing with the KGB. It's ridiculous how much they control the message and control everything that goes on there. The only one that comes close to that is San Antonio. So there's some parallels there. We're never going to really know the full story unless Jimmy Butler breaks with the company line and starts airing dirty laundry in public. And then he's not going to be a Heat player for much longer. Or it'll be once one of these guys is out and decides to talk about it, and it's going to be years from now. So that's kind of the worst case scenario, is that this really is a splintering of a team and they're not going to recover from it. And Pat Riley is sitting there in the wings wearing his Phantom of the Opera mask and is getting ready to trade people this offseason based on what he saw. I think the more likely one is in the middle. Neither best, neither worst case scenario. It's that you had a bad situation. Guys were being abrasive. Guys got hot. They yelled at each other. They patched it over enough and are professional enough to get back to work. But you're going to have some hurt feelings underneath that. And you're going to have guys who inevitably the rest of the locker room winds up having to take sides. Like, hey, yeah, Udonis was was over the line. I support Jimmy. Nah, Jimmy Butler was being a jackass. Udonis and Eric were fine. I support those guys. Or, hey, I want nothing to do with this. I'm staying out of it. That's still a side. And so you don't have a locker room that is completely meshed together. And remember, that's one of the only like real advantages that the Miami Heat have going into a tough Eastern Conference playoff series, because they're not more talented than their competition. In fact, they might be less talented than a couple of the teams they will run up against.
Oh, at least a couple, yeah.
Yeah, but what sets them apart, like we said at the top here, is they execute, they out-hustle people, and they just have that grinder kind of chemistry mentality that a week ago we were lauding as the secret sauce to be dangerous. And now we don't even know if the sauce is in there.
Well, by the way, are you telling me Eric Spoelstra wasn't telling the truth when he said they were arguing about dinner plans after the game? Because that feels like something that would be the truth. Listen, whatever, the Heat need to figure it out, because they could find themselves very quickly out of hosting in the first round, because again, like you said, it's so close as everything. Plus, after they got Sacramento coming up tonight, they got Boston, they got Chicago, they got Toronto, they got Charlotte, they got Atlanta, and then they end the season with Orlando. Like, all those teams are going to be coming at your head. Like, all those teams have something to play for at this point. Orlando, maybe not.
I assume it was a musical argument because Jimmy is such a big country music fan, and Udonis is a old school rap guy. I assume that's what it was about.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out this whole Old Town Road thing. Like, what's up with the? What's up with the?
Is it rap? Is it country?
Yeah, what's up with the Billy Ray Cyrus cameo on this? What's going on here? Like, this is what we want it to be. Let's go to the Western Conference, if you don't mind, for a moment, because let's keep it real. Like, the Suns are fine. The Grizzlies are fine. Let's get to it. The Lakers are not fine, Joel. The Lakers are not fine. And Joel, it's completely within the realm of possibility that with 6 or 7 games to go, and for them, I think it's actually 8, right? Yeah, it's like 8. They missed this whole thing. They missed the entire kit and caboodle, because right on their heels right now are the San Antonio Spurs.
And right on their toes are the New Orleans Pelicans. You got people on either side of your foot, both stepping on you.
Joel, let's just play devil's advocate. Let's say the Lakers don't make it. After this whole offseason of change and this whole full season of eventually got to figure out, they got 100 Hall of Famers, and eventually this will work out. Like, you just need to get going. Like, Anthony Davis just needs to get back in the lineup. LeBron needs to get back in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
What did they miss? Who do we blame in the case that the Lakers, champions named 2 seasons ago, missed the entire play-in, which was designed to get in teams that may have been powerful just on the outside looking squads, but if they missed the whole thing, Joe, there's only 16 teams in the conference, or 15 teams in the conference, 16, right? So, if you're not one of the top 10 and you're one of the bottom 5 in your conference,
you're right. Bottom 10 team in the NBA.
Who do we blame for this?
I think it's going to be a prerequisite that Frank Vogel gets fired, regardless of whether they make it or not. He's been there 3 seasons now. They did win a championship. It's a bubble asterisk kind of year. the Lakers have not had a problem in recent years, really the last decade plus of moving on from coaches at the first sign of issue. They're gonna make him the scapegoat, even though he has not dealt with the injuries, or the fact that the roster was put together horrifically. It really depends on how frustrated is Jeanie Buss and how frustrated is LeBron James. If Jeanie Buss is frustrated, I honestly think that for as great of a job as Rob Pelinka did in putting together a team 3 years ago, and even last year's team on paper made some sense, this year's team on paper made no sense. And Rob did come in after the Magic Johnson era was, a complete disaster. He brought some stability and professionalism, and he's got, a lot of connections from having been an agent himself and that sort of thing. But the shine has really, really come off. And so Frank Vogel is going to go, whether it's his fault or not, because firing the coach is the easy one, and he's been there long enough. And the fact, part of it is injury related, but the Lakers, here we are in game 64, 65, whatever it is, they still don't have a set rotation. They have no idea.
Yeah, Joel, that's a really good point. Joel, they are playing game 75 tomorrow night, and the rotation's all over the place.
Yeah. Granted, there's been some trades and there's been injury and what have you.
Not that many.
It's just been that kind of year.
Yeah.
And they've tried different things and nothing has worked. And he's going to be the scapegoat. I think that Pelinka, rather than just firing the coach at this point, Jeanie Buss should come in and they clean house. Because you cannot have put together a roster with this many defensive holes and so much emphasis on Anthony Davis staying healthy in order to survive for a guy that does not stay healthy. And you were taking all sorts of risks to do that. And for it to flame out this spectacularly, heads have got to roll. The Lakers, though, this is where it's going to be tough, because if you get rid of Pelinka, you're bringing in a brand new front office, brand new coach. There's some very talented people out there, but the Lakers have had their issues before. Things really didn't turn around for them. They were a nightmare until LeBron showed up. And even then, it took a little bit of time to get things going, and you needed Anthony Davis there. But now LeBron is clearly on the last couple of holes of his career. Like, it's not just the back nine. He's on the last couple here. And you need somebody to be able to look the franchise in the eye and say, are we really going to build around LeBron anymore? Not around his past accomplishments, but around current LeBron. Because if we're not willing to do that, then it might be time to talk to LeBron about whether he's going to stay here, and the fact that we might have to go through a little bit more of a rebuild. You got Anthony Davis still. Anthony Davis is your only ticket to either rebuilding the franchise successfully or to starting a rebuild by trading him, because you have no other assets left whatsoever. You don't have draft picks. You have mortgaged everything to bring in Russell Westbrook. And that alone, I think, is what should get Pelinka fired. And I know I'm like all over the place. It's kind of stream of consciousness here, but it's thinking through these things out loud. Like, yeah, Pelinka made some mistakes, but he was building a team to try to placate LeBron James and win during their smaller window that they had. There's nothing really wrong with that, but to have pulled that Russell Westbrook deal and to think that that was going to work, and then to have given the contract and all of this stuff, like, those are fireable offenses all over the place. Westbrook has been the in-season scapegoat, but he's not the scapegoat for all of that has gone on, nor will he be this offseason.
And Russ Westbrook's numbers are his average. Like, he's playing like he normally plays. Like, Russell Westbrook, and I was hopeful, because I like Russ Westbrook a lot, because I don't get enough people who scowl constantly at other people in my life. But that was not going to be the piece that made this offense or defense, frankly, work at all. And the thing that got Los Angeles back into things last year was the fact that they turned into a defensive heavy and very good defensive team last season. And that's why a lot of us thought,
and
hey,
then they got hurt and they lost that steam, right?
Right. And they thought,
but they had it for a while.
Yeah, if this team, blah, 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 healthy, LeBron doesn't go out, AD doesn't go out, right? Like, this team could give someone like Phoenix an issue if they play this kind of defense. Well, injuries be damned. And it's also now the offseason be damned too, because this team loaded up on age, did not help themselves out with any type of shooting or real defense for that matter. And now they're just they're in a quagmire. They're in a quagmire of bad contracts. And I don't mean like lengthy, just contracts. You're like, we just filled out the roster with a few names. Los Angeles sort of, maybe a little courting from LeBron James, got like a Carmelo Anthony there or something like that. But from a basketball sense, none of this makes sense. Memphis, like their average age is like 13, right? And they're the number 2 team in the West. Like
they're the best team in AAU also.
They are like that's why they lost the other night, because they had just played the second of a back-to-back. Their AAU tournament they won, but then they had to go back and play in the in the NBA game.
Right,
that
and
night.
some of them have finals coming up in a couple of weeks. So.
But yeah, and that's a team I don't think people thought was going to be this good. I certainly didn't think they were going to be this good this year. But like you see sort of the difference in approach, and like those aren't super expensive guys either outside of Ja, really. It's just a poor roster. It's just a very bad roster. Frank Vogel will have to be the most out front face to go. And yeah, I would think Rob Pelinka's got to go too, because he put this roster together. You can't fire the players, right? Like you can't fire LeBron for the most part, because I think he's in for another year before he can do anything with another contract. So you get rid of the two of the 3 faces that you can of this. LeBron's the most public face that you can't do anything with, and you lose some of these contracts and get a little bit more money back on the books, and maybe you do something this offseason. But man, like this,
there's not a lot. There's no quick fix here.
Yeah, and this team's in dirt, man. Like it is going to be tough for them to turn this thing around quickly.
What are the odds, do you think, that LeBron asks for, leverages, negotiates a trade or a buyout from these Lakers?
I think it's I don't think it's likely, just because I think we'll sort of wait to figure out when Bron comes, right? Like I think LeBron feels content enough in Los Angeles on that stage, and that he doesn't have to build his legacy around championships. I'm sure he'd like to, but I think he knows he's at the end of his career, ending stages of his career, and kind of just sort of sees that last 10th pole, that 18th hole coming with LeBron Jr. coming in at some point, and saying that's just going to be it. Like right now, I'm just middling, and that's a bad place if you're a franchise to be in.
Yeah, you got one of the most expensive guys in the league. Obviously, he's got the historical clout that there's not much anybody can say. But yeah, it does kind of feel like LeBron, he's talking a talk, but there's a lot of laurels resting going on here. And that's not to, again, LeBron still is putting up some fantastic numbers, still some big games, all that stuff. But it just seems like LeBron has been very advantageous of recognizing when situations are untenable and going, this is not worth my time. He did it in Cleveland to leave the first time with the decision. Goes to Miami, gets a couple of rings, has that on his resume, and then there's that talk of, okay, Pat Riley has kind of put the line in the sand that Eric Spoelstra is the boss and Pat Riley is the boss, and this is never going to be LeBron's franchise. So you're here, but you're a player. It's Dwayne Wade's team. And there was that talk that LeBron, kind of wanted to go back to being the alpha guy now that he got his ring. So where does he go? It's like jumping back to an old girlfriend, right? Something familiar where you knew what the role was. And he goes back to Cleveland and brings that championship back home.
Cements his whole legacy. He can do no wrong there.
Phenomenal sports story, all that good stuff. But they lose 3 out of 4 times. And when he kind of saw that it's untenable that they're going to be able to get better, and you've got some really good rising teams in the East, he goes to the West, to the Lakers, where he can join the league's, icon franchise, try to get his name up in the rafters there. He gets that ring, and now he's back in an untenable situation. And I think younger LeBron would have looked at this and said, this is not going to get better. This is not worth my time. I don't want to have the stink of this associated with me. I'm seeking greener pastures. And you can say that's very un-Jordan-like, whatever you want, but LeBron has been very pragmatic about this stuff. It's very obvious.
Again, also a very different time as far as the ability to move around.
Yes, and now you're at the end of career. You're in LA where you're going to be a part of that whole ecosystem and the parties and the glitz and all of the things that come with being a Laker in Los Angeles and being one of the team's best players. And does their record truly matter? Because no one is going to blame LeBron for it. So even if they suck, he can still show up head held high as one of the two best NBA players in history and a Laker to boot. And like you said, kind of waiting. I don't want to say cash in his checks because LeBron does still, he's still very productive and it's obvious he still works on his game and all this stuff, but it's a different time and place. And I don't know. It's tough because if you're the Lakers and you really truly were going to go into a rebuild, it would be time to part ways with LeBron James. It just would. But they're not going to do it. Yeah. And I don't think he's going to do it yet. But if you have another lost season last year and that contract is up, I think he moves on and maybe chases a ring while he waits the 1 or 2 more years he's got to wait.
I think also, I don't think this is impossible. But if he's there another 3-4 seasons, which is possible, he averages 18, 22 points a game in that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Maybe they make a deep run in one of these next 4 years, 2 of these next 4 years. He's got the championship behind him. Mm-hmm. There may be enough to consider LeBron James's jersey in the rafters. Like that, you might be able to start making a case for that, because I think this is year three for him now. But
because the Lakers wouldn't just be rewarding his contributions there, even if his contributions as a Laker are slightly less, the rest of the career on top of that, they're going to want to attach their name to LeBron's much as he would want to do that, with them.
Yeah, it'll be. And also, basically, the way this offense is, like, he'll have a ton of numbers that are just Lakers numbers, like a ton of stats that just will get kind of lost in the frame. Okay, Joel, one of the questions you sent me, I want to ask for next week, because I think when we get closer to the playoffs, that's a really cool one. But let me ask you, going back to the East for the final one, because I'm fascinated now again by this team, because Kyrie Irving.
Oh, we're going to skip the playoff matchups? We can save it for episode 100, I guess.
I'm sorry, it's a big bonanza. You don't want to save something special for the big bonanza?
I mean, we can do that. Then I segued my Boston Celtics question for no reason, but it's fine. It's fine.
It's not segue. People have forgotten it, trust me, a long time ago.
I'm not going to break a clipboard about it, but
okay. Thank you. And let's talk about Kyrie Irving finally. But let's talk about these Brooklyn Nets, who now are in a very advantageous position because Kyrie Irving can now play wherever he wants, except for Canada. And that could be ginormous, humongous, big news for Brooklyn, because they're actually still, believe it or not, pretty good. And they've been pretty good with Kyrie. They've been good lately with Kyrie. And Joel, it feels to me like this Brooklyn team is a team that someone like Miami or someone like Philadelphia might not want to see in the first round, but the way they are situated in the play-in, because of all the losses due to the Kevin Durant injury, there might be one of these stupid 7 or 8 seeds that ends up like going deep into the tournament. But I want to know from you, with Kyrie able to play now everywhere, except for, in the Maple Leaf State, does this make Brooklyn again one of the top 4 teams in the East?
Well, first of all, who is this Kyrie Irving guy? I've never heard of him. I don't think we've ever talked about him on this show before.
He played at Duke. I think he played like 7 games at Duke. It felt like I think actually legitimately it was like 7 games, and then he exploded onto the scene when he claimed the Earth was flat.
Ah, yes, that guy. Top 4 is pushing it, but
is it though?
But here's the thing. Miami apparently really wants to open the door.
That's what I'm
to
saying.
this being a possibility, because is Brooklyn better than Milwaukee or Philly at this point? I don't think so, just because Kyrie being back is huge, and we'll talk about that in a second. But Kyrie's only played 22 games this season. He didn't play much 2 years ago or at all. Last year, he didn't play all that much either. So him and KD have never played all that much together. It's looked good when they're there, but you've got those chemistry issues and questions to answer. So there's variables. Brooklyn has a lot of older players. They've got new players that were brought in at the deadline. There's just a lot to sort out in these last 8 games. Unlike the Lakers, the Nets have shown enough, and enough of these variables seem possible to be positive, that where you give Brooklyn a lot more of the benefit of the doubt that they can do it. So are they head and shoulders better than the Bucks or the Sixers? No. Are they going to be a problem in a series with those two teams? Presumably. But both of those teams, especially Milwaukee, you would give the chemistry advantage, and they've got plenty of talent there. Boston is a wild card because they're killing everybody, including good teams. We don't know if that will travel into the playoffs. Remember, we've seen teams in the past. If you remember, like, it's been 10 years, but San Antonio had that one year where they went like 20-2 to wrap up the season or something ridiculous, and then lost in the first round to the Grizzlies. Like, so sometimes there's noise here, and we don't know until you get into a series. But Boston right now has proven that they are a top 4 team, and in fact, the best record team in the East. So we're going to put them in there. But that 4th team, yes, it should be Miami until this week. And now we're left with some major question marks, and that's where the door is probably wide open. If all things are good in Miami, I would give Brooklyn no better than 5th right now, because, yeah, they're clearly better than the Bulls, who are struggling. The Raptors are a nice story, but that's not a team that's going to win multiple playoff series. Cleveland is, again, kind of like Chicago, where they peaked at the wrong time, and some things have, injuries especially, have crept up against them and finally are becoming insurmountable. Charlotte and Atlanta, they could maybe cause the right matchup a problem in the first round, but I don't think they're anything more than that. So Brooklyn almost by
Charlotte
default
has won the season series again. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, but
including like the other night.
Brooklyn by default, because of the sheer talent level and the fact that KD, when healthy, probably would have been the MVP this year. And that Kyrie is meshing well with him. I mean, Kyrie's averaged 27 points a game in the 22 appearances he's made, which in a topsy-turvy season. And it's not just like Kyrie has been an empty points guy either. I want to point this out. You know, player efficiency rating isn't everything, but he's at a 23, which is really, really, really healthy, and goes to show that, like, it's not just a guy coming out and putting up points like Russell Westbrook did over the last couple years, but then the plus minus and some of these other more advanced metrics don't shake out. And you're like, he's not actually helping them get ahead. Kyrie, the numbers bear out that they are much better when he's on the floor than when he's not. And 22 games is enough of a sample size to go, yeah, this is reproducible.
Well, let me tell you what, like what we know my feelings on Kyrie.
Yeah.
So I don't want to blow him up too much.
Yeah, we're just talking basketball Kyrie at this point, not sideshow Kyrie.
But what we're asking of Kyrie and the way he has performed has been insane. Like, it has been a ridiculously good output. Like, think about this. So I went back and looked. Remember, he had 50 against the Hornets, earlier this month, like 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the next night was 22 against the 76ers on the road. Then he couldn't play for a week. Next game back, scored 60.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's against the Magic. Still scores 60. It's hard to do. Then couldn't play for another 8 days.
Three games in those 8 days.
Scores 43 at Memphis, right? Like, and listen, like he played his first like home game, yesterday, and went 1 of 9 from 3, but still had 11 assists in that game. Like, he contributes in so many ways that even if it's not purely just through buckets and the baskets and through balls in the basket, it's funnier if I get it right the first time. If it's not just through sheer points, he's such an effective player that you put him in a 7-game series on this Brooklyn Nets team. I'm not so sure you don't see why they're thought to be the favorite still.
I'm not going to go that far, but it certainly is possible.
I like Philadelphia more. I like Milwaukee more. But like, I'm starting to lean a little with Boston by the way they're playing. But I don't.
You're not crazy for saying it. I mean, you're not crazy for saying it by any means.
When I watch this Brooklyn team hit at full tilts, and then they get defended at full tilt, they're winning a lot more than they lose. And for me, that's going to mean a lot when you get possibly 7 attempts at a team.
They had a lot of other question marks throughout this season, many of which were injury related, but some of it was age related. Remember, Blake Griffin all of a sudden just looked like a corpse out there. He's not in the rotation anymore, but he had been so helpful to them last year. Paul Millsap was brought in and was supposed to be a big answer. He turned into next to nothing. LaMarcus Aldridge has not played all that much. And so there was this massive question at center where Nick Claxton gives them the energy and the youth that they lack, but he's not battle tested enough and makes too many mistakes. Well, then all of a sudden Andre Drummond, falls in their lap as part of the Ben Simmons, James Harden trade. You then also get Seth Curry, who answers your question mark at shooting guard and as a floor stretcher, which Joe Harris was supposed to be, but has been out all year because of injury. So you've answered that question, although Curry is coming back from injury himself. It moves Patty Mills back to the second unit. You bring in Goran Dragic, who you picked up off the scrap heap in Toronto. He answers a question mark again of battle-tested playoff guys who look like they have enough left in the tank. And they've been searching for a wing this entire time. It was supposed to be James Harden or Joe Harris. Neither of those guys panned out for the different reasons. You don't have Ben Simmons back. James Johnson has given them some minutes, but not enough to be anything, more than like your 9th guy. And here's Bruce Brown, who they brought in a couple of years ago, and he's kind of just been there and shown flashes as they tried out Landry Shamet and a couple of other guys who have since moved on.
Yeah.
And Bruce Brown over the last couple months has really settled into a role where he's a defensive specialist, but he has to be able to hit a shot now and then. Brown being in that starting lineup with a handful of guys who are not exactly defensive first guys in Kyrie and Seth Curry. Kevin Durant is a plus defender, Andre Drummond plus defender for the most part. Brown fills that defensive role for them, but he has been surprisingly effective on offense, not only in picking his shots or being able to knock down three-pointers, but picking opportunities to beat people off the dribble and doing things that he hasn't really done since his days in Detroit when he was one of their top prospects out of nowhere. So all of a sudden the lineup has coalesced and you get Kyrie Irving back. The only reason why I can't go any further in like anointing them and beyond the chemistry issues is when they looked unbeatable and when we were putting this team on paper as a number 1 seed, it included that third superstar, and that was James Harden. And we only had the littlest snippets of Kyrie and Harden and Durant together. But when we saw it, we're like, oh man, that team, they can figure it out. They do not have a third superstar anymore. And we don't know if or when Ben Simmons is going to play. And we don't know when he gets back due to this layoff being absolutely a mental issue, whether he's right in the head to come back and contribute. Because the last memory of Ben Simmons is that disastrous playoff series against Atlanta. But now it's become a physical issue too, as he, overtrained or whatever it was and wasn't ready to return. So you get him back and he's an anomaly and a wild card no matter what happens. There is no way he is your third superstar this season.
Well, that's why I think, listen, I'm not saying like with the trio as they were constituted, heavy favorite to win the East. Right now, I would just sort of pencil him in as a slight favorite. I mean, yeah, people could beat them, sure. They're just not the overwhelming favorite they were coming into the season that I thought they would eventually be. But hey, here we are. What do we want to do? Fight it now? You want to fight them? You want to fight them now, Joel?
You talk about LeBron resting on his laurels, and we're wondering kind of what the motivation is there beyond saving face. In Brooklyn, I sense a chip on the shoulder in a good way, and it's not just Kevin Durant's notorious prickliness or Kyrie being kind of that way too, but Kyrie finally getting back to be able to play all of the games after waiting for so long, and Durant having seen and proven just how important he is to this team and all of the drama that has surrounded this roster for a year and a half, and now finally to have a little bit of stability, at least a game plan going forward, barring any more injuries, God forbid. And this idea of Kyrie Irving can change the entire narrative if the Nets do really, really well, or if they win that championship. Durant changes. He probably doesn't care about the career narrative because he's proven what he is. But if these guys are able to come out and battle the doubters, whatever you want to say it, there just seems to be a fire around and a focus around what everybody is saying, what they're doing, and the way that they're playing together right now. And that is an intangible plus as long as you don't blow up at each other like the Heat.
I'll be there to watch it if it does happen, though. That's for sure. Joel, that's it for us. How can people get this here video podcast? By the way, Andre Drummond, relax with your giving the Tyreek Hill peace sign as you're traveling down the court, taking 13 steps before it's done. Come on now. Up 20 already. Relax.
Episode 99 in the books. You can find the video version on YouTube. Give us a like, share, subscribe, ring the bell over there, please. Audio only version, if that's your preference, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. And we appreciate all of our listeners here, but none more so than 7'6" Taco Fall. This episode is for you, buddy. We want to see you on a roster and on the court full time very, very soon. And Arky, Shea, next week is episode 100, at least of the full episodes. We passed the 100 threshold a while ago, but that was counting some of the shorter episodes and that sort of thing. So this will be 100 of the full enchilada. See what I did there with tacos and enchilada.
R.I.P. BB-8 bites.